I know two people who planned for retirement in very similar ways, and both of the retirement plans were very solid, but one decision caused Jane's plan to work and then Kevin's plan to fail. Imagine spending your whole life preparing for retirement and doing all the right steps and taking all the right necessary precautions, only to see it get messed up with just one bad decision. And what actually happened was it wasn't just the decision that was made here. For a while, they were on the same pace. There was a series of missed decisions or a cascade of missed opportunities for Kevin that continued to make things worse and worse, while Jane was able to take the right steps during each one of those and make things look a lot better. Now, this video isn't here to scare you. It's really here to prepare you, because by the end of it, you're going to feel a confidence level increase and you're going to feel an excitement level about retirement increase as well. Because we're going to learn from other people's mistakes here so that you don't make the same mistake. Let's go back to the year that they retired. They were both excited. They were looking forward to this next stage of life, and they were prepared and doing a good job of it. And they modeled various scenarios and projections. They looked at all the what if scenarios, what could happen in retirement. And they also planned for those big areas, which is you've heard it before on this channel if you've seen it, the income plan, the investment plan, and then also the tax plan. So all their ducks were in a row, but the year was 2020. And I'm sure you remember it well. They retired early in the year. And as you might imagine, by March, they felt worried. They felt nervous because of all the uncertainty, both health related and financial related. And they were wondering, both of them, if they made the right decision to retire, right? It seems like the worst possible year to retire, especially because they just stopped working and the work paycheck was done and they were starting to take money out of their investments right away every month. They had it on auto draw and they're watching their investments go down fast, faster than they can remember. But the difference is Jane made a decision that worked and then Kevin made the wrong decision. And the sad part is that Kevin, he did a lot of work. He did a lot of research before making this decision. He thought it was the very best course of action that he could take to improve his financial life. But he forgot to do one critical thing. And that one small oversight by Kevin, it led to a big impact. So in this video, I'm going to go over the good things they did before they retired. Number two, the one decision that caused their plans to really diverge and go in different paths. And then number three, the subsequent events that happened after that made it worse for Kevin, but better for Jane, where she was able to take advantage of it. So the goal of this video is to reduce your worry and increase your confidence in your plan. And here's the good news. It's not that hard to do. You just need to follow a few of the right steps. Now, if I haven't met you yet, I'm Dave Zoller. I'm owner of retirement planning firm Streamline Financial. And if you're thinking about your retirement more than ever now, check out the 5-minute retirement below. Let's get back to Jane and Kevin. Both of them, they're in their early 60s or were in their early 60s, and they lived through a lot of market uncertainty, just like you have. And they were almost used to it. But the big difference was they were younger back then. Back, 2008, 14 years ago or so, or at the time, maybe 12 years ago, those big corrections, they're never fun, but they knew that they had time on their side. And they even, back then, I've known Jane for a while, they saw it as an opportunity because they knew that they could continue to add to their savings and add to their 401k and investments. And they were buying on sale, so to speak. But now they weren't adding to their accounts. They were taking money out. And now it feels like time is no longer on their side anymore since they're taking withdrawals, taking money out of their accounts. Can you relate to that sort of feeling? If you do, it's very normal. Maybe you've noticed there's an increase in the psychological factors as you really related to money as you're getting close to retirement or the retirement date. And it's just that feeling of not wanting to mess anything up. As you're planning for retirement, the decisions that we make, they carry a lot more weight now, or at least they feel like they do. And we only want to make this decision to retire one time. So we got to get it right the first time. And it's not just the psychological or emotional parts here. It's really the technical parts of retirement planning. It's more complex now, or at least it's different, right? You might have realized this too, because planning for investments and tax efficient withdrawal strategy and also just the overall tax planning, tax reduction strategy as you're taking money out, it's different now as we're thinking about the next 30 years after retirement. Because as you look back, the financial success that you've had over the last 30 years, it's going to be different moving forward. Really, the last 30 years, the keys were savings rate, and investment allocation, mainly, most likely going for growth. Now, the next 30 years, there's going to be a change, right, in the investment allocation just to make sure we can weather any storms that come. And it's going to be based on, well, a wise way to do it is base it on your withdrawal strategy. So start with the withdrawal strategy and then see what accounts to take from and when and how much you should. And then the big one, the big complex thing that a lot of people reach out to us for, everyone's favorite is taxes. It is actually our favorite because this is where we see the most money saved and put back in your pocket. And by the way, if I ever start talking about or rambling about tax planning with you, if we talk, then just remind me, pull me back a little bit because it's important for you and important for us. So now, what did Jane and Kevin actually do? They did a lot of the same things that led to their success, but they did one thing that made all the difference. And here's full disclosure. Here, I worked directly with Jane. By the way, that's not her real name, but I worked with Jane. Kevin was not my client, though I had a good picture of how he'd been planning and the decisions that he was making through this process. So here's the good things that they did before retirement. Number one, they both planned. They had a solid income plan, tax plan, and investment plan. Number two, they both knew bear markets were a part of the plan, right? Not only do we know that they're going to happen, but they were also prepared for them. And three, they both had investments in the right asset classes and they were ready for whichever economic season we might be going through. And they weren't making a guess, but they were just being prepared for each one of these. And then number four, they knew where their investments fell or what buckets they fell into when it comes to the three bucket strategy. And this is actually a big piece of the decision that they made, where they differed and where one was successful and one was not. It really comes down to where they placed their focus. And that single decision, it caused that cascade of events. Good things for Jane, bad things for Kevin. So the moment of truth, it came in 2020, March of 2020, when the market dropped over 30% in just a few weeks. I'm sure you remember that. And Jane and Kevin, they had a choice. What Jane did made all the difference. We actually talked, we had a conversation right during one of the worst days. There were multiple 5% plus or even 10% down days. So we had a conversation. She was worried. She just retired. Everything seems to be going haywire all of a sudden. And she wondered if she should be changing the way she's invested, right? Should she be putting more money into cash? That was the main question that she had. So we reviewed the plan and we focused on a very important part of the plan, which is something that delivers a lot of peace of mind to clients when these scary times come. And what we did was we looked at the first two buckets alone. These actually aren't her dollar amounts here. This is just an example. And I might as well put a little smiley face here since it looks like that. But this brought her a lot of comfort because the growth investments here were down a lot, right? She knew she didn't have to touch these though, because we had 7 years worth of withdrawals in these two buckets. And the great news here, these two buckets were actually positive year to date when we were looking at them in 2020. So this allowed her, almost dropped the pencil, this allowed her to focus on the gain rather than the gap. Now, Kevin, he focused on one big pie here instead. And there's the sad face, but he focused on the whole thing instead of this key area right there. What he didn't realize was that each investment has its own strategy and it has a purpose behind it. And it ended up making him focus on the gap. The other big thing here that he was doing, he brought up a few names of some big doom and gloomer influences or influencers out there, which you probably know. They're that type of the end of the world guys that you see on YouTube or wherever, Twitter or X, or if you go on social media. And by the way, if you ever get spooked by one of those guys, save this video that hopefully pops up on the screen right now. It's called, if it's not there, it's called "They're Predicting a Big Stock Market Crash." That's something, break the glass if you ever get worried. Something's going wrong. Watch that video because that should or could help you with just how those guys work and what they're thinking. But anyways, Kevin, he didn't have that video and he saw that the growth bucket was down a lot and the total portfolio was down a lot. And that fear and that worry, it took over and he ended up selling everything and he went to cash. At that point, Jane and Kevin, they weren't far off. But Jane started to proactively do those things, which we're about to go over, that benefited her. It was three things specifically. And I don't know if I showed this, but I was showing this date right here. They weren't far off. But here's the three things that they did specifically. And this is where it really everything changed. And when we look at the negative side, Kevin, he said, I'm just going to wait until things settle down and then I'm going to buy back in again, or wait until things come back and then I'll buy back in. There was really there was no solid plan or concrete plan of what to do next. And as you know, what Kevin's talking about or did talk about, it's called market timing. And the only problem with market timing is getting the timing right. Right? That's a quote from a famous investor, Peter Lynch. He also said, if timing the market was a really great strategy, why don't we see the names of some big market timers at the top of Forbes' list of richest Americans out there? It's because it's not a strategy, because there really is always a reason to not invest. I don't know if you can see these going up to about 2021, but there are always scary things happening in the market. This is going back just to 2009, believe it or not. All of these things that made people second guess what they were doing with their investments and their long-term plan. But as you know, we want to focus on the things that we can control, not the things that we can't control. And a lot of these are related, right? We can't control the markets. We can control portfolio allocation. We can't control the news and the bad things happening in the world, but we can control how much news we take in. We can't control inflation, interest rates, or any of these things. But expenses, our own taxes, spending, and behavior, we can. Now, here's the bad news. Back to Kevin. As things recovered rapidly following March, Kevin couldn't get back in. He said, not now, because things were higher. He was pretty firm. He believed that there was going to be another drop coming soon, and he wanted to just hold tight. And there were other reasons why, what he was thinking. But the reasons kept him on the sidelines while Jane moved forward. Now, here's the three things that Jane did to even better her position. Number one was she implemented a strategy called tax loss harvesting. So she was able to sell a few investments at a loss, which allowed her to lower how much tax she actually paid that year or the following year when she filed her taxes. And it saved a few $1,000s in taxes for her. Now, important note here, she didn't sell and go to cash, because after the sale, she bought back a different investment, but it allowed her to keep the same investment strategy, the same overall allocation. It's an interesting strategy to think about, tax loss harvesting. Side note for you DIYers, just be aware of this 30-day wash sale rule, which can sometimes negate a loss. Something to Google if you're doing it on your own. Now, the next thing that she did, Jane evaluated doing a Roth conversion. So I'll just put Roth C here, because during this time, and lots of times, you can actually convert more shares to Roth than you could have just a few months prior without paying more tax. So that's something to look at if Roth conversions is in your plan and makes sense for you and your family. And then number three, this is the big one. She was able to do the opposite of how she felt, or really what felt right. She was able to do the opposite because she followed a system. Because during corrections, it feels right to kind of hunker down and just wait it out and just wait for the thing to pass. But what feels right is to really get more conservative, right? Or do what Kevin did and go to cash. She didn't do what felt right because she followed the streamlined investment system that was able to rebalance her portfolio that looked like this. This is a very simple picture here of a 60-40 portfolio of stocks and bonds. Obviously, it's more complex. Now, in this scenario, we're looking at stocks going down when we have a 60-40, and it ends up being a 50-50. So doing the opposite, she actually bought, or she added those three buckets. She added money into the growth bucket at that time. Not easy to do, but having a system to follow is so much easier for our clients because it just removes the emotion from that equation, and it's just repeats success over and over. So she moved money from one bucket to the other. And then a few months later, it was midsummer or so, maybe end of summer. And then those rebalance triggers were set again. And she was able to rebalance again. And going back, she went back to the original allocation because that growth portion grew quite a bit from March until, I can't remember exactly, July or so. And it worked in her favor better than if she just hunkered down and waited it out. So don't leave your retirement to chance, and learn from Jane and the good things she did, and also learn from Kevin and the mistakes that he made. So make the right decision today. Be prepared for future volatility because it's almost a guarantee that it's going to happen. Now, just to recap, focus on the gain, not the gap. Prepare for all four economic seasons. And then when bad things do happen, focus on those buckets again to increase peace of mind. And think about that second order thinking. A decision is a decision. And then what's the result of that decision? And then remember, in retirement, one decision can really change everything. So make sure it's the right one, and your future self is going to thank you. And here's that video on how to increase confidence. If you see a doom and gloomer or something in the news or freaks you out, here's the video. And then also here's another video on making your retirement even better. And I'll see you in the next video. Take care.